Now, if I hope everyone are well, good with Node.js, right? So app.use, okay, whatever we pass the middleware inside the app.use, no matter what, all the requests will have to go through that middleware. Okay, in case of session, if I put some custom logic, okay, and say that all my request has to go through that middleware, irrespective of any route, Node.js for it's an HTTP route, it will go inside that. In case of here, it is app.use session, it will go into the session middleware and do the necessary operations. Now, what is session? The package what we imported in the top of the file, express session. So that is a session. This accepts some configuration object which says that secret, resave is false, and cookie and max age for that cookie. I think this common terminology, maybe this is store is memory store, which I'll touch up later. So we are right now assume that we are referring to Redis itself. So here secret is some random UUID where your session object is encrypted with the UUID you pass, and you might see some places this value will be coming from an environment variable helper file. Okay, this for anonymous user, I think this is 5.2.0. I'm not sure, this might be have been revamped to use the env value. Okay. Max age is what is the TTL, time to leave for the session object. Okay, if a user has come and not done any activity for next specified time, the session gets destroyed. Okay. Now along with this, let's say we have already come and the route is coming here and the session is created. Post the session creation, there's another middleware, comma, this is one part, and the second part is register device with Kong. Okay. Now the request, whenever it's coming along with the session creation, we do call a Kong API to register the device with the system. Are we good? So this two activity will be happening whenever there's an anonymous request coming. Clear, right?
That secret is a random number?
Yeah, anything, you can give your name also, doesn't matter. But it will be encrypted with your name. Okay. So maybe I'll keep drawing it so that you will have picture like what we are discussing. Now there's a request, let's say R1, okay. This is an API basically, okay, /R1. Now it comes to your portal. Now the session is created. And your TTL is set for 1 day. Since you are anonymous user, your TTL for the session will be 1 day. Okay, right? And the device register with the Kong, I'll discuss with this. Okay. So this is for the session creation for the anonymous user. Any questions with this session? From here, the connected, whatever the functionality will go from here. So now guest and user login. So guest I have discussed the session and the guest, how that. So guest login is nothing but the session is created for them with the limited TTL, right? Now for the login, okay. Now I am browsing through the pages. I am going to explore and textbooks. I am going to scrolling through the courses. Now I click on login. Now, as an anonymous user, I need to be converted to a logged in user. So once I click on login, I'll be redirected to the key clock page, and I provide the credentials, and it will be validated by the key clock, right? So far so good. So the key clock will return the success response to our system. So once that response is received, okay, so we have a couple of activity which will be done. Okay, there are 3 steps which is mandatory to be done. Which key clock? Okay. This file name is called keyclockhelper.js file. So all the code what we are looking at the portal backend. Okay, nothing to do with the Angular stuff. So now there's 2 methods. One is authenticated and de-authenticated. Okay, when we initialize keyclock client, okay, from the keyclock library with the store and the configuration for the key clock, we configure the key clock saying that once you are authenticated, okay, execute the authenticated method. Once you are de-authenticated, execute the de-authenticated method. Now what is that method? We will look into it. So the same implementation is written here. Okay. So authenticated, so once the response from the key clock is given, okay, assuming that we are successfully logged in, it returns to us saying that user is valid, and it returns an access token for us. Okay, so once that is done, there are 3 steps here. Right, post login request is an array. Okay, into that array, we are pushing this 1, 2, 3 methods into this array, saying that once user authenticated with the key clock, perform these 3 operations before sending the response to the portal frontend. Okay, so once all the activity is done, if you see after login, we will be redirected to a resource page or from wherever the user is coming through, right? Before that, all this happens. Okay, we'll go detailed into it. So we will generate a logged in token, get the access token for the current user request, and get the current user roles. That will be a last step. So till this point is good. Can we move, or any questions? So first step is generate logged in access token, which is written inside the Kong token helper. Okay, I'll just minimize for a bit because I wanted to show how many variables are involved in this. Okay, if you see TTLs for logged in, anonymous user, and device register token, logged in device register token, refresh token, and blacklisted, I'll come back. And when you are storing the session object, right, so you need to store the access tokens once it's generated. So it's an object based store. So the LHS part, the key in the right hand side, right, if I want to say that it is a logged in token, this key is also configured, I mean not configured, it is declared at one place so that you can reference it all across. Like for example, if I say request dot session dot user access token, so it will return an access token for me. But that also is one-time declaration, because we don't need to use the repeated words across the code. So these are all the variables involved. You can have a look at it. I mean the tokens I can't just publish here. And this, if you see there's a fallback. Okay, it is nothing but portal backend trying to communicate with the Kong admin utils to get the token, and if in the hop, if there is a network fail or a packet drop, or if the HTTP call is not successful, something went wrong or exception, the try catch block will handle that and it will return the fallback token. Now how do we generate a fallback token? Is the DevOps who will provide a fallback token. Is one time they will create and give it to us. Right? So that is a fallback token. The purpose of the fallback token is that only. Whenever when we discuss on the function, if the function is failing, the fallback token will take into place. Right? So before we jump into the code, I'll show the flow chart, how it looks. So as we discussed, anonymous login, we saw the session and the other middleware, which I told like we'll discuss. So the request flows like this. Instead of the code, I'm making you to walk through the flow chart. Okay. So the URL blacklisted, I'll come back on that because it's a bigger subject on that. Again, here, if you look at that, there's a flag. Wherever I've written the flag, it is nothing but the environment variable which we saw on the top of the file. Based on the flag, and if the user session is not created, like this is the first time I'm coming, there will be no user session. So these are, if these are true, then the device register will, the user device will be registered with the Kong and the session will be created in the Redis. If it is false, you update the TTL for the user. Okay, let's say because 5 minutes before we created the session, now I'm just refreshing the page. I have a session is already created with me. I'll update the TTL from now onwards, destroy within next 1 day. After 6 hours, if I come and refresh, from that point of time, the 24 hours will be the TTL. Okay, that is the flag which says that update the TTL for session. It will not do anything. No altering the session object. It just update the TTL. Right. The next is nothing but it will pass the hop to the next control function, which we saw in the array. It will pass the next function. Okay. As I said, when we're trying to register the device with the Kong, right, for the API request, something goes wrong. Maybe DevOps or someone will be deploying some service, or not in case of production, and something network failure, or your service is having a huge load, a timeout. In that case, update the request with the fallback token and create a session object with the max age expires and the role as anonymous. Okay. This is crucial because this gets updated once the user is logging in. Right? If device registration is successful with the Kong, okay, we update the request object with the token received from the Kong, and the cookie max age expires, whichever is configured, whatever the configured value in the environment variable, and we move the next request. So far good, or you want me to pause for a second? Pause for a minute. Everywhere fallback is handled because if session is not get created, right, user is stopped. That's a showstopper. He will not be able to do anything. None of the pages will load. That's why everywhere you see that fallback is there. Right? Cool. So, in case of the user successful login, device register for the logged in user, okay, post the success callback from key clock. Okay, blacklisted we'll talk later. So again we call the device register for the logged in user, and we create a new device register token, and we update the token with the max age and expires. This value will vary for a logged in user. Assuming that 7, the value, that's the max age will vary.
It becomes more. Maybe. Let's assume for non-logged in user it can be 5 minutes. For a logged in user it can be 24 hours.
Okay.
So first 24 hours he can do nothing. Log in and do nothing, it will still stay there. When he does something, it will start regaining with the same session.
Okay. So once that is done, this is something which is crucial. Again, the next step, the second method in the array, that is, we call the admin utils in the Kong. There's a unit called admin utils, which DevOps can put some spotlight on. What does it do? It takes the access token which is written from the key clock, goes to the admin utils, sees that for this user, what are the roles needs to be added to the session object. It constructs an JWT token, and it embeds to the request and sends back to us. So why this step? Because we have a key clock, we have already seen that roles has been added in the portal backend. Why we need this step? Because there's a layer called OPA and RBAC. These two are responsible whenever the request is going. The request will go through the OPA layer and Kong. Now, the access token which is generated by key clock, the contract between the key clock and the OPA is not at all there. They don't understand the language between them, right? So the token which is generated by key clock is respect to key clock within the boundary that. Now, we need to know if that request is genuine, if the user has the roles or not. This is an RBAC. RBAC stands for role-based access control. So to solve that issue, we generate a secondary token that our system will understand. Okay, whenever there's a request to the backend and to the Kong layer. Now let's say from here, I've logged in and my request goes to, let's say enrolling a course. Okay, do I am an authorized user to do this operation? The OPA layer and the RBAC will check this. To check that, we need to have an understanding token which is generated by our admin utils, because that is we are constructing it, so we can unpack it when we have a request and read what the roles the user is possessing. That is why the secondary step of creation JWT token is introduced. If we find anything saying that user, you don't have permission to execute this unauthorized access. First step is to check the roles, if the user is having roles or not. If he doesn't have, flag it off. Anything with these 2 steps? Questions?
The role of the user is not maintain a session or logged in.
Any questions with the 2 steps? Third step, I'll come back. Okay? That's why I kept it apart, because this 2 is important. Okay? If you want, I'll recap very quickly. Post successful login, we register the device with the Kong. Again, with that, we call the admin utils to get the signed JWT token with the roles encrypted, get it back to us. Now the request is still pending with the array, the third function to be executed. That is nothing but so we saw generating and logged in Kong token and access token. Now the third step is get user current roles. Okay. Now we have all the okay. So function to get user roles, as simple as such. So we will be calling user read API. Okay. So once we receive the response, okay. So once we receive the we are flushing it actually. Okay, once we assuming that we have got the response, so we will flush the session roles, whatever it's anonymous or whatever the data. We're just resetting it. I mean, making it an empty array. Now, once it is done, we are using a set user session data, and we are sending the request object and the body, that is response body, which is received. Now, what does it do? It does is it iterates with the array of roles what we have taken, and it pushes to the session object. If you see request.session.user SID, session ID, and the organizations, whatever is there, and the roles, right? So everything is pushed into session object. If you see that we are modifying the request object, so it carries the session object every time in the portal backend. So we are modifying it, and we are returning back this to the caller function. That is here. Okay. Once that is done, once we have updated the token, TTL, roles for the logged in user, we are calling request object.session.save. So this is a built-in method which is exposed by the express session npm package. .save will update your session object in the Redis. You don't need to worry whether I'm not calling Redis here, why it is not. Because we had seen that in the server.js we have already mentioned that memory store is Redis. Right? The memory store is nothing but if you check in the key clock helper here, okay, this is the memory type what we are exposing it. Again, as I said in the beginning of the topic, portal.session.store type. If it is in memory, okay, in memory is nothing but your Node.js ka in memory, which when we run it in local, right, we don't have Redis or we don't have any Cassandra setup in the local. I mean, ideally we can run it in a Docker image or in the local if the system is supporting. So if not, we can go with the in memory. That is, once we start our server, all the session data will be in memory itself. So the moment you stop the server, all the session object will be destroyed. That is in memory. This is built in. So nothing more implementation on that. The other thing is Cassandra and Redis. So based on the environment variable settings, we export the data store for Cassandra if it is Cassandra or Redis. Now I think fallback condition is for Cassandra itself. Okay. So if nothing is mentioned or something which system cannot switch the case, it will default fallback to Cassandra. Right. The implementation for Cassandra and Redis, how it is instance we are initiating, that you can check it in respective implementation files, right? For the Redis.
No, it can be at the top. No, just go to the top and show it.
No, sir.
It is reduce util and
Reduce utility. So once we have the environment variables, we are configuring Redis, whether it's a cluster based or standalone. I think Redis supports multiple flavors of data types. So it is standalone, or I think I'm not familiar much with that. Okay. Oh, if it is standalone or if it is a cluster, right? Two types of checks we are doing, and both are tested. So standalone or cluster based. Based on that, you can pass the environment variables, and the instance get created, and it will be assigned to the session object. Right. So once the get current roles is done, right? There's a request for telemetry.helper log session. The user session has started, so we are just logging a telemetry event, and then we are passing the next nothing error, so null and logged in. Okay, all the array, which methods we are pushing into an array, is running in an async series. It waits for each function to complete before it picks up the next. Async is a library which helps us to run synchronous and asynchronous programs. So, any questions so far? Okay, we discussed how the session is getting created for anonymous users and logged in user, how the session of the anonymous user getting updated once the same user is logged in. Once I log in from the key clock, successful authentication, how I am registering the device with the Kong, and how I am generating a access token from the admin utils, right? And post that, how I am reading the user roles, and how I am creating a session object. These are the mandatory steps which will go through for each and every login request.
Okay. Yeah. Just a question. Okay. Will someone go and make a changes in this code for Diksha? Is there any use case to change a code in this use case?
Make sure that you pray for God.
Don't. Okay. There is no. Okay. If you guys touch any of this code, okay, screwed up.
Because
Okay.
just imagine the number of users coming in, going out, TPS and all those things. If you do some changes in this, and if the TPS doesn't work or a user session is not created, all your APIs fails.
Okay.
Because that is the entry point for you. All your API
And
fails.
the worst nightmare is something goes for a toss. The logged in user sessions objects will take for a clash.
Any issue
There's
here?
nothing you can recover on the session
All the
objects.
sessions of all the users are gone. They have to re-log in. Okay, so all the users, okay, who has done that activity, assume that some creators are doing some activity in the editors. If they didn't save, everything is lost.
This piece of workflow, especially, I'll take a note on this. This piece of workflow is aggressively tested with simulating the users, with simulating this Redis coming down in the standalone in the cluster, and multiple logouts and login at the same parallel time, and it has been brought to a stable state. I don't think so.
So this will be a core change. Okay, ideally you don't have to worry about all this code. It's just for your information. Consider this is just for your information. All the session being handled.
Just to make sure that
Okay.
you ID 8 key, how is the, okay, there is a next thing which is coming that is called as whitelisting. This is going to take up in that part. When you do a new API, you would have written a new API. To read that new API, this whitelisting will come into picture. So to do the whitelisting, this is very important. We will try to see the session, whether the session, the user has these roles or not. All those things will be checked there, from there. Okay, that's why this is very important.
Yeah. Okay. I assume that no questions, or if you have any questions to clarify from the team? I'll take 2 minutes. I'll conclude with connected topic. So, sorry, because due to time crunch, I'm extending it. Till now, we have seen this. Have we ever tried in the forum, apart from the team, have anyone tried, like say, disha.gov.in / workspace or / resources? Have you tried without any logged in, directly accessing the URL? what's the point of action? What happens when we try to access slash resources in an incognito or non-logged in browser?
It will show the preferences window basically. It will try to get the.
Are you sure? No, okay.
So since there is no user, it will try to obtain the information from that session, like which board, which class, and everything on that.
Okay, okay. Any answers? Okay. So I'm going to Diksha. Okay, I'm going to diksha.gov.in/resource incognito mode. Right?
So, okay. Yeah, so that happens for the other page. I think the explore page, I believe.
That's why I asked slash resources.
Okay.
Now, basically login page. So it's a keycloak login page. Now, how the system is understanding for slash resources, I need to, if the user is not logged in, should I need to redirect him to the login page. We discussed so much, but how the system is intelligent enough to understand that?
I think there is some configuration written in environment file,
Okay. Also, we have tons of routes in the front end. So,
backend file.
okay. Have anyone has encountered this configuration?
For the session.
The browser session isn't that in place here. I mean, there is nothing in browsing right now.
Yeah, fine, absolutely. The slash resources goes to the portal backend. Now it sees for a session.
For session.
Sorry? You're close to the answer?
Some middleware, I think.
Which middleware? Okay. There is a client routes.js file which defines two set of routes. One is for public, and one is one is for non-logged in and one is for logged in. Okay, anonymous and logged. Thank you, Vinu. So I tried to access slash resources, which is here. Now it is app.all. Entire application will onboard this set of rules. Wherever you use app.use or app.all, Node.js first picks up that conditions and the metrics and the middleware to be executed. It will be loaded into the process before the server is starting up. Now, with this, we have the session object, which we have discussed. Along with that, additional middleware called keycloak.middleware. Okay, it says that admin/callback logout. Okay, and this is the one which is responsible for detecting that if I go to slash resource page, if the user is logged in or not. The route encounters here first. It checks for keycloak.protect is nothing but an inbuilt function which is exposed by the keycloak npm package. Says that this route is protected. That's it. This route is oh, 45 minutes. Okay.